Hello everyone, today we're going to create these lovely cards using the Seaside Shore stamp set. So without further ado, let's get stamping. Hello everyone, my name is Santera, coming to you from thecraftsergeant.com, and today I wanted to share with you these lovely cards using the Seaside Shore stamp set. Now I've been so eager to use the stamp set and I'm so happy with how these products came out. So the one on the left is the initial card that I created, and the one on the right is the one that I decided to step up. So let me tell you exactly what you're going to need to create this project. So you are going to need the Seaside Shore stamp set. It comes with 15 clear mount stamps, as you can see here. And as I mentioned in my previous videos, anytime you use a clear mount or a photopolymer stamp, you are going to need an acrylic block or acrylic blocks. As for ink, I used Old Olive, Crumb Cake, Blushing Bride, Dapper Denim, and Calypso Coral. Now, you can let your creativity run wild. These are some colors that I chose out of my collection, but whatever you choose is fine. So let's talk cardstock. You are going to need a piece of thick Whisper White for your card base. It's going to measure 8.5 by 5.5 inches, scored at 4 1/4. You're going to need a regular sheet of Whisper White, and this measures 5.5 by 4 1/4. You're going to need a scrap piece of Whisper White, and this is going to be big enough to hold your sentiment, and we're going to cut it out using our stitch framelit dies. And you're going to need a piece of Dapper Denim for the circle die, and then you're going to need 2 little slivers of 8.5 by 1/2 inch, and these serve the purpose of the border that I just pointed out. So some other items that you're going to need, for the stepped up card, I actually used the Seaside Texture Impressions embossing folder, and you're going to need a pair of scissors. So for my circles, I specifically used the second from the biggest circle, the stitch framelit die. And then I chose the regular circle die that was slightly bigger than that one, so that way it will create a border. You're also going to need some Snail Adhesive, some multi-purpose glue, some Dimensionals, some pearls to accent, your bone folder, a pencil for your measurements, a ruler to also help you measure. And this is optional. I use glossy accents, and I put those actually in the bubbles. So that's optional. You don't have to have that. You'll need your Stampin Trimmer. And of course, the Big Shot. Now, one thing that I didn't hold up yet that you are going to need the Aqua Painter for this. There is an option. You could use a watercolor pencil to color in some of the images, or you can use just the regular paint. Alright, so now you're going to take your cardstock base, the thick Whisper White, we're going to fold it and burnish our creases with the bone folder. Alright, we're going to sit that to the side. And now we're going to take our matte piece of Whisper White, the one that we are going to emboss in a few. And how I got my slant is Project Grid really helps. You either need some sort of ruler or the Project Grid is perfect for this project. So what I did was I lined up the piece of Whisper White up against the dark line on the Project Grid. And as you can see here, I am just counting over. So it depends on how big you want your slant to go. I specifically want it small at the top and big at the bottom. So I just counted over 2 blocks and made a dot, or marked a dot where I'm going to cut. So the same for the bottom. As you see here, I'm counting over 4. I'm counting over 4 blocks, and then I'm making a little mark. You're going to take your ruler, and then you're going to line it up with the first 2 dots, and then draw a line. And then you're going to do the same for the bottom. Also, don't worry about the pencil lines because they are going to be covered when we begin to assemble our card later on. So once you're done marking your lines, you're going to line up your pencil marks with the center of the mat. So on your cutting trimmer, you will find that there is a groove where your blade goes through, and you want to make sure that your pencil marks are lined up on both ends of the card between that groove. And then you're going to go ahead and cut, and you're going to do the same for the other side. Line it up, and then you're going to cut. Alright, so you should have 3 pieces, 2 triangles, and that middle piece we cut out. So we're going to take our 2 triangles and put them to the side, and we're going to take this middle piece and line it up with our cardstock base. Alright, so we're going to take that middle piece and line it up, and we're going to trace an outline. So this is going to give us a guide when we begin stamping later on. But before we get to that, we're going to take our triangle pieces and we're going to place them in our embossing folder. Now I want the waves to go horizontally, so I'm going to place the triangles inside of the embossing folder in that position. I'm going to run it through my Big Shot and I'll be right back. Alright, and now we're back. So now it is time for us to go ahead and start stamping our images onto our cardstock base. So you can choose whichever images you want. I decided to choose quite a few just so I can have a pretty good variety as I'm stamping. But like I said, you can use your creativity and it can take you wherever you want it to go. So I'm going to start off by first stamping the seaweed image onto the base of my card. And how I'm going to do that is I'm not going to focus on putting it in a certain position. I'm just not going to think about it. I'm just going to start stamping. Now those lines are there as a guide, and I'm not going to try to even up my stamp in the middle. I'm just going to randomly stamp where the stamp image is going to overlap the lines. So all of my images aren't going to be perfectly placed. Alright, so since I already have my Dapper Denim out, I'm going to go ahead and knock out stamping my sentiment onto that extra piece of Whisper White. I didn't like that one. I ended up pressing too hard, so I'm going to just re-stamp it on the back side. And I'm going to finish stamping the rest of my images. Alright, so we are finished with our stamping. So now I'm going to take my Aqua Painter and I'm going to fill in my seaweed. Now the amazing thing about Stampin' Up! Ink pads is that they are dual purpose. So not only can you use these things to use with your stamps, but you can also use them to watercolor as well. So as you saw, I just pressed on the case while it was closed and it transfers the ink from the pad into the bottom part of the case. So now I can use that as a mess-free way to watercolor. And that is one of the reasons why I love Stampin' Up! Products, because they are amazing. They're so versatile. Everything coordinates, and it's just there's no limits to the creativity that you can get with these products. guys, so it's almost done. It looks really nice so far. So we're going to begin to attach or assemble our card, but before we do that, we're going to have to cut out our sentiment and our Dapper Denim circle. So to do that, I'm going to take my circle dies. For my sentiment, I'm going to use specifically the Stitch Framelit die. I'm going to line it up, and then I'm going to take my piece of Dapper Denim, and I'm going to take the regular die, and I'm going to adhere them with a sticky note and run them through my Big Shot, and I'll be right back. Alright, so we are back, and now it is time for me to glue our thin blue strips or our Dapper Denim strips onto our embossed triangles. So to do that, I'm going to take some of my Tombow multi-purpose glue, and I'm going to spread a thin line on the edge that's going to be touching the stamped images on our card base. You don't need very much glue for this. And then you're going to adhere the thin strip on the back side of that triangle. So the good thing about the multi-purpose glue is that it gives you a little bit of time to adjust your cardstock or your paper, and then it permanently bonds. So we're going to do that for both pieces. And then we're going to take our scissors, and we're going to try to cut as close as possible to our Whisper White, making sure that it's even. And we're going to do that to the other triangle as well. It's now time to place our embossed pieces onto the cardstock base, onto our card base. Now you can do this two different ways. You can either do what I'm doing by gluing, just adhering it straight to the card base, or you can take dimensionals and pop them up. I decided to glue it down because I'm going to pop up my sentiment. But it's all up to you and how you want to design your card. So I'm taking my Snail Adhesive, and I'm going to adhere both pieces to the card. So as I'm adhering these pieces down, one thing you want to take note is to make sure that you're lining up the edges with the card base. And another thing that I discovered as I was creating is that you don't even have to use both pieces. You can actually take away one and then decorate the rest of the card. So at the end of this video, I'll display another alternative to this card. So now I'm just adhering my sentiment to the Dapper Denim circle, and then I'm going to place some dimensionals on the back side and attach it to my card. Alright, so now it's time for our finishing touches. So I'm going through with the glossy accents inside of the little bubbles, the ones that just have the outline, and I'm just putting a small dot. You want to make sure, if you're using glossy accent, depending on how much you use, to allow it to dry. So it's going to take a little minute to dry because I used quite a bit inside of those bubbles. And here I am adding the pearl embellishments throughout the design. I'm getting a little bit better. If you watched my previous videos, you'll see that I always struggle when it comes to rhinestones or pearls. They always tend to give me a hard time. But practice makes progress. So I'm going to add this one last one. Here are the finished products. In the middle, you can see the one that I initially created using just the stamp set. And on the ones on the outside, I stepped it up a notch and used the embossing folders along with the circle framelit dies. Alright, so if you like this tutorial, you can find all of the measurements along with a list of supplies on my blog at thecraftsurgeon.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Etsy. Don't forget to like this video and to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and happy stamping!